What's up, wrestling fans? Chris Cash here with another edition of The Voice of Wrestling, coming to you live on this Monday evening, 6:30 Eastern, of course, leading you into Monday Night Raw. And I am thrilled to bring back Nick Paglino. We were off for a couple of weeks, but we are back, and there's a lot to talk about. So let me go ahead and bring him on in. And Nick, I'm excited about it because we've got a lot to talk about. I mean, I had a lot of things that I wanted to say last week. That stuff is now carried over, and so this week it's just jam-packed. I've got a lot of stuff that I want to say. But first, I mean, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, this is a jam-packed day. Let alone we've got Elimination Chamber coming up on Sunday. We've got Raw tonight, and we have breaking news earlier today, that you and I, our favorite wrestler of all time, is going to be inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame, which, of course, we'll talk a little bit about later on. So I'm doing great. We got a lot to talk about tonight.
Oh, no, I went live, and I promised people that I was kicking the show off with this shit. So we're not wasting any time at all with this, because I've got to tell you, like, I'm going to start bringing this up. Like, Nick, you can't hear this, I guess. I can hear it, and everybody else at home can hear it.
Oh, I might not be able to hear it, but I can feel it.
You can feel
I can feel it.
I don't want to get screwed over with copyright stuff, so I'm not going to, like, bring up the video. But listen to this good stuff. Listen to this sweet stuff right here, man. Yeah.
Don't lie. This was the first song you learned all the words to, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100% it was.
You sang this song in the shower. You brought your shower with you wherever you went, so you could sing this song to people and sound better than you've ever sounded in your life.
Oh yeah, no, man. Like, look, I've got to give it to him, because he really did. No, it was an awful song. But here's what I'm going to say. Look, I remember this. Obviously, everybody's got their childhood memories of pro wrestling, right? But Be With My Baby Tonight, With My Baby Tonight, My Baby Tonight, I don't know what the actual song title really is, but I remember the gimmick. I remember
With My Baby Tonight.
Okay, there you go then. So I remember the gimmick. I remember when the Roadie and, of course, Jeff, they got into the feud and it came out. I don't remember, though, like that BG and the Roadie actually sang the song. Of course, you can tell that he did. But, Nick, I was so young during this feud, and we need to look up when it was. Maybe somebody that's watching can let us know. I don't remember how long ago this was. That would give you my age, or give me my age. I don't know for a fact that I didn't know it wasn't Jeff, like, at the time. Like, I don't know that I didn't know that, or that I might have known that at the time. So I remember this gimmick, and I was telling you before we came on the air, Nick, I grew up on country music, and I remember this resonating a little bit. My family, everybody on my dad's side, played in bands. They sang all the time. We would get together and literally pick and grin. That's what we called it, Nick. Have you ever heard that expression? You know what picking and grinning is?
No, I grew up on Earth.
Right. So we get together, we're picking and grinning, and we would just sing. And of course, we only know like the first verse of every song, but we would sing through 1,000 of them, from Willie Nelson to Merle Haggard to George. Sure. I mean, all the Georges, man. We love George. If your name is George and you're in country music, we probably like you in the Chisholm family. So for them to come out with this, and by the way, I'm hyping this up as if once we lead into the conversation, once we transition to the conversation about whether Jeff Jarrett should actually be in the Hall of Fame, you're probably going to be surprised which way I'm going to go with this, because I really enjoyed this Jeff Jarrett. I really did. It still sticks with me.
You enjoyed the version of Jeff Jarrett that was in a music video, not actually singing the music.
Absolutely.
That's the
best version. That's the best version of Jeff Jarrett, I think. If he would have just stayed in that music video, if everything he ever did was a music video that he didn't sing, I would probably be like Hall of Fame 100%. But that does lead us.
You would personally. You would be the one to induct him.
I would be there to induct him. Nick, you and I have done this show off and on. Obviously, we took a big break, but when did you join? I mean, I started it in 2002, I think, or 3.
I believe that I officially joined the show in about 2005, 2008. So we're talking like 12, 13 years.
Yes, right. So, I mean, it's been a long time. Jeff Jarrett has been involved, was when we were kind of in the peak of the Voice of Wrestling. Jeff Jarrett was in the peak of his career. He then transitions, starts TNA. Of course, he's at the top of that, and that was such a huge deal. So Jeff Jarrett was on our minds a lot, whether we wanted him to be or not. And I don't. I mean, when you become kind of an opinionist, you know, in media of any kind, you're going to start having to come up with opinions that are bold and direct. And ours, both of ours, Nick, steered, at least in Jeff Jarrett's case, to mostly negative. And I remember Les Thatcher was the one that I remember coming up with this, at least from my recollection. It was him that kind of coined this, and a lot of people have said it in the past. And Nick, you and I've said it we said it on the show years ago all the time when he was kind of putting himself front and center in TNA, was that he was a mid-card heel at best. Like, that was the expression that we used over and over again, and I know that I did because Les Thatcher brought that up, and I'm thinking, man, you're right. And people need to know their roles in the business, and he was good. This stupid country song, the angle that he had with the roadie and BG James, there's no problem with that to me. But once he finally, you know, that X-Pac heat that everybody talks about, I really think that's given too much credit sometimes, Nick, but I will say this. I don't think Jeff Jarrett was selling tickets. Let me just say that. Like, I don't know. He got heat for his position in TNA. He got heat in WWE. I'm not going to discredit that he knows this business and he deserves to be in it, and we're going to debate whether he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But, Nick, at the end of the day, my problem with this, and this might be a bit controversial, so I want to tread lightly, other than the fact I still want to get my point across. I really just screw it. I'm going to come out and say it. I'm worried, Nick, that this is a sympathy induction. Like, the timing is peculiar. And I said this in a live video on Facebook just to promote tonight's show. I went live and, of course, started talking, singing the song and then talking about Jeff Jarrett a little bit. Look, I'm not gonna say that I know for 100% he doesn't. If I really thought about it, because I haven't had to think about this forever. Like, Jeff Jarrett going into WWE as of 3 months ago would have been unheard of. You know, like, we wouldn't have been thinking about this, or 6 months ago, whatever it was. We wouldn't have been talking about this. This has been out of sight, out of mind. He has multiple personal issues, obviously, or he had. He's now on his road to recovery, and I respect the shit out of that. But we can go down the list, Nick, of how many times WWE sees the new shiny good story object and decides this is their time, when guys that deserve it far more at this point get looked over for another year because someone like Jeff Jarrett comes along, and because it's a feel-good story, he's recovered, all of that. Like, he should not be going in this year. Like, what is the point of it? Not that we can talk about whether he should go in any year ever, and I would probably at this point lean saying, no, I don't know that he really deserves to be there. But why this year? Why over all these other people that deserve to be there? It just timing-wise, Nick, this wasn't on their mind. He gets strung out, gets crazy, gets kicked out of his own damn company for like the third time now, and then he goes to a WWE bought and paid for rehab. Thank God for that. It probably saved his life. I hope it did. It's not like I want bad luck on the guy or ill will towards the guy. I just think it's just peculiar timing. And WWE does this constantly. Joni Lauer, China, is not allowed to be mentioned in the WWE. Then she dies. And Triple H, of all people, is the first one front and center to sing the praises of China. Get the out of here. Come on. Like, that's bullshit on so many levels. And yet they don't see it. And to me, Jeff Jarrett is kind of a similar situation. Like, if he died, they would be putting him in. He is near death. Let's put him in because he's recovered. I just think, look, let him get his just due if you think he should be in there. I don't know if he should. We can debate that on face value, but should he be going in this year? It's just peculiar timing, Nick.
Well, that's I think the crux of your issue here is because you can look at other guys too. You can look at somebody like an Ultimate Warrior.
Sure.
Obviously the Ultimate Warrior, he was still alive when he was inducted, but that was a guy who no one thought would ever go in because of the relationship he had with WWE, and then he's there. We've seen it with guys like Jake the Snake Roberts. People didn't know whether or not he was going to go in, and all of a sudden he gets a surprise phone call by his own admission that he's going in. But these are guys that I think everyone would agree deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Macho Man Randy Savage. This is a guy that you want to debate his situation with WWE or rumors and controversies and what people will allege he has done in the past to fall out of favor with Vince McMahon. Everyone, anyone who's watched an ounce of pro wrestling knows Macho Man Randy Savage deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think the crux of your issue here is whether or not Jeff Jarrett actually belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame. And then to that merit, what is the criteria for what a lot of people will call a fake Hall of Fame that is simply, maybe like you were insinuating, you didn't necessarily say this, but is just sort of an on-the-whim decision.
Yeah, sure.
Made by Vince McMahon.
Right.
If he wants to put me in the WWE Hall of Fame tomorrow, he can. He will. It's his Hall of Fame. There's no real criteria. And so I think when you look at it, the question here, I think that's probably why you and other people might be looking more into the timing of this than you would somebody else, because the question lingers as to whether or not he really deserves to be in there. Given his, all right, first of all, let's look at his WWE career, which we know WWE does not base what you've done in WWE on whether or not you're inducted. Otherwise, Sting wouldn't be there. Otherwise, certain legends who wrestled in Japan wouldn't be there. You've seen a lot of guys who have their career was established and made popular in other promotions outside of WWE. I would think, maybe you would agree. I would think Sting is the biggest example of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was never even in WWE.
I mean, well, he was for a brief.
His boom.
Right.
He's inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
He wrestles 2 matches, Hall of Fame, retires. Now, you never know. I mean, he had the injury. He could have, if he hadn't been injured, maybe he wouldn't have retired at WrestleMania. They would have. But either way, the point remains, not to digress here, that he had done nothing in WWE. So they're honoring more your contribution to pro wrestling. And so then that brings into play Jeff Jarrett launching TNA. And, whether you love TNA or whether you don't, and whether you are someone who in TNA's heyday, and Chris, I think you'll agree with me here, I never watched TNA, even when I considered it its best.
Right.
You and I went to Bound for Glory in what year?
2007, I think.
2007, maybe?
Yeah, or 2009 is one or the other, yeah.
I never watched TNA, and that was arguably when TNA was at its hottest, when people agreed its product was its best. I never went to a TNA show or watched TNA on television because of Jeff Jarrett.
Right.
I watched it pretty much for every other reason other than Jeff Jarrett. Was he responsible for selling tickets? I really don't know. That's something, we don't have any proof to discern either way. But I think a lot of people would agree. The guys like the Samoa Joes and the AJ Styles and the Christopher Daniels and the X division and the tag team division and the Knockouts division.
Right.
That was when that was all firing on all cylinders.
Right.
That was the reason why people were watching TNA. I don't think it was because of Jeff Jarrett, but Jeff Jarrett created it. He co-founded the company with his father, and through its ups and downs, and whether or not you're someone who wants to say, "Wow, TNA, yeah, certainly it's still around, but it never really drew much money and it's never really big competition." Well, it's still here today, and through its ups and downs, it still exists.
Sure.
And it has to be right now considered, a leading wrestling promotion in the country. I mean, there aren't that many there.
Yeah.
But it's there. And a lot of huge names have come and gone. The Booker T's, the Lex Luger, the Stings, the Hogan's,
Bischoffs,
Ryan Macho Man Savage,
yeah.
Eric Bischoff,
right.
Rob Van Dam. They've all been there.
Sure.
They've all spent time there.
Yep.
And I think you can't deny that. And whether or not Jeff Jarrett was fired from the most recent incarnation of TNA, he created it. But I don't know, is that enough to merit a WWE Hall of Fame induction? I think in order to kind of put a final point here on it, if you want to know my opinion, I would say at the end of the day, yes. The guy, I think, has done enough in wrestling. Even if he positioned himself as a top guy when no one else saw him as a top guy, and he probably shouldn't have been a top guy, he is responsible for leaving a major footprint on the history and the industry of professional wrestling. And so I think it is for that reason that he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Well, and I think as far as credit, number one, us giving him credit for TNA is probably not really what matters. It would be Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, founder, owner, not founder, but of WWE, I guess he is. But look at what Vince McMahon has done with the wrestling company, and then look at really the true track record and all the stories and all the proof that TNA would have never made it past year one, obviously. Honestly, when you think about Nick, do you really give TNA, do you give Jeff Jarrett credit for even what TNA has turned out to be when you think about what the model was, what the model was before, like in the beginning? Weekly pay-per-view, I mean, completely failed, number one. It was unique, and you give him credit for effort, but it failed. I mean, it was failing. He's been bailed out. TNA's been bailed out several times. So it's not as if, can you really give him credit can you give him credit for coming up with $1 million? I mean, maybe, but do you really give him credit for TNA lasting all these years? Because he had the idea to start a wrestling company, one that actually would have failed if it wasn't for big pockets. I mean, I look.
Like I may have the idea to invent a hoverboard, but until I'm flying on one,
right.
It's just
right.
It's an idea, and certainly yes, he put it together and he launched it.
Sure,
and it happened.
Sure.
Today's product, no, he's not responsible for it at all, because we've seen such a drastic shift with Anthem Sports and Entertainment, the firing of Jarrett. The company's going in a different direction. I think a lot of people.
Here's the thing, though. I feel like Jeff, when you really look at what he contributed, I mean, I almost think there's an argument to say that he did more damage to that company than he did good. For the same reasons that we didn't like him back in the time.
You just questioned whether or not Vince McMahon is acknowledging TNA. He's certainly not. In the press release that WWE, I'm looking at it right now, issued today, announcing Jarrett in the Hall of Fame, they make no mention of TNA.
Right.
They make no mention of Impact Wrestling.
Right.
So all they're listing here are his successes, and they do include With My Baby Tonight as one of his numerous successes in WWE. But this just lists all of his WWE successes. Going in here and saying, that his resume is one of the most impressive in sports entertainment history. He's a 4-time WCW champion, 3-time United States champion. So, okay, there's his time in WCW. And he was a main event guy in WCW. He was involved in Bash in the Beach, one of the most controversial moments in professional wrestling history.
One of the worst moments.
When he laid down for Hulk Hogan and then later wrestled Booker T that night for the title, for the new title or whatever the hell that was, the real title. Are those contributions? It's funny. I would actually argue his contributions to WCW are maybe what put him in contention for the WWE Hall of Fame. Maybe I would tend to agree with you about TNA and then also his contributions to WWE.
I think
in 1999.
I think to kind of bring it home on my end, I think pure longevity in the business and what he's kind of accomplished probably says. I mean, I don't really know that giving him a lot of credit for TNA. I mean, yes, you give him credit, and a lot of people give him credit. He had a vision. It was the wrong vision, but at the end of the day, he actually did go out and try to perform something, put something on that actually did carry over at all cost. He found the people that he had to find to keep it afloat. It did go some. It's still around, for God's sake. So it's hard not to give him some credit for that. WCW, I agree, he was a bigger star. At least for a couple of years there, they really tried to push him a lot harder than I think anybody really even wanted at the time. I think his talents, I mean, he knows the business, and I respect Jeff Jarrett. So my opinion of him has actually changed since back in the day when you and I just wanted to knock on him every week. I feel like he is, I do give him a lot of credit for being around. So as far as that goes, I mean, it can be debated. WWE, but the other side of that, my other point would be WWE's Hall of Fame in general is kind of a joke. I mean, there is no criteria, as you mentioned, and you can say there shouldn't be any criteria in general for a pro wrestling, a fake Hall of Fame, so to speak, but that's not true. I mean, get over yourselves if you're a real wrestling fan. That should never be your argument. If you're outside the wrestling business, sure, that's the only argument you're going to have. But to me, a Hall of Fame recognizes, that's all I look at as a Hall of Fame, recognizing somebody's, what they actually gave the business long-term, whatever it may be. If they gave that much to the business to be honored in such a way, because, even in real sports, Nick, there are people that make the Hall of Fame that's debatable. You can a Hall of Fame where you're judged by your peers, those that vote when it's a subjective in every form and fashion. To me, it doesn't matter if it's wrestling or if it's freaking NFL. Like, to me, you can debate that all you want. But the fact that Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame is really a joke anyway, just kind of makes all of this a moot point, honestly. My biggest issue, though, really is not so much about whether he gets in or not. It's really the timing. I hate the timing. I can't stand that it's now. Like, I just feel like there's enough people that deserve to go into the Hall of Fame before Jeff Jarrett. I really, really do believe that. And so it's going to be interesting to see, though, and to find out what comes out of this, Nick. I mean, is almost every time. Now, he's not the headliner. He's not the Goldberg. He's not he's not the headliner this year. So is he going to get wrapped up in a storyline? I mean, do we want to see him in a storyline? I mean, I don't know that. I mean, it'll be a little nostalgia. It'll be interesting to see. I would love a live, performance with My Baby Tonight, with him and BG. That would be great. But other than that, I don't know if I really want to see too much out of him. So we'll see what they decide to do. Nick, I also promised on the live feed, and then there's a lot of stuff to cover, obviously. So let's kind of go through some of this stuff fairly quickly. I want to talk about Dolph Ziggler. I want to talk about some of the updated plans for WrestleMania, obviously. But I also want to start off with something, Nick, that I don't think we got the opportunity to talk about since the last time we were on the air, and that's the fact that another kind of non-wrestling related, but still, Vince McMahon is bringing back the XFL, and he's not bringing it back in a small way. I mean, $100 million worth of stocks, whatever it was, that WWE shares that he sold off just to put it in this new company, this new entity to launch. And I don't want to get into politics here. It's not worth it. The timing of this is obviously what it is. I mean, the fact that his entire media, his announcement day was pretty much all about, so can they kneel for the national anthem or can they not kneel for the national anthem? And that's pretty much, you can tell that everybody else is catching on about the timing of him bringing back a huge failed, massive failure of a project years ago, now he thinks the disenfranchised NFL fans are going to end up latching on to this because they are so desperate for anything but the NFL. And I think there's some truth to that. But I think in the end of the day, you can tell Vince McMahon, he's stubborn, he's prideful, He's arrogant. He's egotistical. All qualities you have to be a successful CEO of any company, to be an entrepreneur. At the level that he's at, you've got to have all those traits, and he has it. He hates the fact that the XFL failed. Hates it. It eats him up inside. If I can only imagine, just hearing stories about him, reading things about him, and hearing about how he is, and knowing of just as talking to tons of business owners, a failure like that is going to eat you alive. WWE's obviously doing exceptionally well financially, so this is a good opportunity for him to say, you know what, Hunter's doing this stuff. Now I can tackle something. Now I've got enough time away from my number one priority because of Hunter and Stephanie and the team I have in place. I can now go tackle this one more time. The timing is obvious, but yet this is also a dream of his. Nick, just real quick, what do you think is the over-under on the success chances of this time around? I mean, are you giving it 2 seasons or more?
Okay, so 2 is the number. I'll take the over on that.
Okay.
I think, because it was something I think Vince actually talked about in the conference call, and Stephanie McMahon said it once in an interview just not too long ago, a couple months ago, where Stephanie said that one of the things Vince taught her in life, one of the most valuable things he taught her in life, is that it's okay to make a mistake, but never make the same mistake twice. I think when they first did this, remember when they made the announcement, the launch, the actual first game was played 1 year after the announcement, which gave them really no time to think this thing through. And I think it was apparent in watching the games, this was not well thought through. I think Vince acknowledged that in the conference call when he announced this, that there were mistakes made the last time, and they're not going to make those same mistakes. They've got 2 years now to develop this. So I think there will be enough of a difference and enough of an improvement in this new XFL product that could carry it beyond 2 seasons. The question is whether or not anybody's going to care. And the perception of, again, a product that is being given and promoted by someone who does what mainstream America and the mainstream sports press considers fake wrestling. So will this be fake? Will the games be fixed? And I'm not asking those questions. I know they won't. But to any casual fan, it was just like when Brock Lesnar had his first fight in UFC. And everybody said, oh, well, here comes this fake wrestler into UFC. Oh, now that means the fights are going to be fixed. And, is everything predetermined now? Blah, blah, blah. So you're going to have these people who I think are still not going to be able to get past the idea that this is this is a wrestling thing.
Yeah, but let's also
a fake wrestling guy, which I think is smart, which is why I think it's smart that Vince McMahon is completely removing himself from this.
Right.
He said that after that conference to announce it, he will not be a figurehead. He's not going to be a talking head for this.
No WWE superstars all over. Yeah.
Out cutting promos.
Right.
Right. There's going to be no crossover to WWE.
Yes,
Jerry Lawler is not going to be calling games.
Right.
This will have nothing to do with WWE, which is very smart because it cannot be. You cannot taint these waters.
Sure.
But like I said, I will give this a chance. Why? Because it's not gonna interfere with my enjoyment of the NFL.
Right.
And you know what? They did something that I think was very smart. If you notice during the Super Bowl, the XFL account, the official Twitter account, was sending tweets responding to things that they thought were bullshit during the Super Bowl. And there were a couple of the catches. Remember some of those reviewed catches? I think it was the Zach Ertz touchdown.
Right.
Remember
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dove in and they replayed it. And then I remember the XFL actually tweeted a photograph of that, or maybe a GIF of that happening. And they said, in the XFL, a catch is a catch. none of this garbage, and so they were reacting to a lot of the things that were going on in the game to tell fans, you're not going to have to deal with this crap in the XFL. None of this survive the ground, or we have to review the catch, or you've got to complete the process and blah blah blah. You catch the ball, it's a touchdown. So I think that's very smart, to go after the thing, because the national anthem thing, that's this big politicized byproduct of what's going on with Trump and the way you feel about politics and his involvement in it. What I think has been going on long before the whole national anthem thing is people's actual criticism. Hey, you and I fought about when Detroit played the Cowboys in that playoff game a couple of years ago, and there was the Calvin Johnson catch that was taken away, and then the next week after Dallas won, they played Green Bay, and it happened to Des Bryant.
Yeah,
and we called it the Des Bryant catch. I think people have been a lot more upset about the officiating and the rules of football.
Sure.
Much longer. This predates any of this national anthem stuff that's been going on in the past year or so. And so I think it's smart that the XFL is capitalizing on that.
Right.
And saying, okay, well, we're going to change those things.
Yeah.
And I think when the XFL first happened, I mean, look, people are always going to bitch about officiating in any sport. If your team wins, it was a perfectly officiated game. If your team loses, the officials suck. There were terrible calls. Everybody's always going to make officiating excuses if the game doesn't go the way they want it. But I think back in whenever that was, 2000, 2001, I don't think there was nearly as much complaining overall about the officiating in the NFL as there is today in 2017, 2018, after this season. So, maybe that's where the XFL could have a bit of an edge if they really want to promote what I think he said, which is a reimagining of football, but football nonetheless. Let me ask you this question. I want to hand it back over to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think one of the big problems with the XFL originally is that it deviated too much from football? Was the XFL football? Did it feel like football to you?
No, it did to me. I mean, especially after the first few weeks. I think they, number one, let's not think that we don't have a proof of concept here. People were interested. They went out of their way to watch. I mean, it debuted with great ratings. I mean, it really did. It had the ratings it needed to sustain, but then it started dropping off. I think the crossover was one of the biggest problems with it. I think it really was. Plus, and this is still going to be something that he's going to have to get over. It's NFL light until it's not. I mean, it really is always going to be that. The superstars, the coaches, everything is going to feel. It's not even going to feel as relevant as college football. I just feel like there's a ton of college fans obviously out there. This is going to be NFL college light until it's not. And obviously, luckily, the XFL is so far behind us in a lot of ways. Now, people are going to be researching it. They're going to be finding out what it really was. But I went back, the day that he announced this, and I watched some of these watched some of this stuff. Their championship game was a blowout. I mean, it just wasn't good competitive football. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't, real football qualities there. I mean, you had Jesse Ventura announcing, you had literally Stone Cold and The Rock opening up the whole league. I mean, it can't be that again. And Vince has made that very abundantly clear that this is going to be professional football. It's going to be faster paced. It's going to be very defined. And I think people are going to give, and you're right. He's got 2 years to pull this off. But yes, I do think it felt like football. It just was very hokey in a lot of ways, and it was just too over the top with the pyro and stuff. I mean, people just really do want to see good football. But look, I think, keep in mind, Nick, there's a major element here that was not around when XFL debuted and was around back then, and that's social media. I mean, the explosion of social media, not just social media, the internet and things like that were around. Social media can almost make or break anything. If people are at least talking about it, it's going to be successful. I feel like it's going to get eyeballs. And I mean, Vince McMahon is about one of the only people in the world that can actually bring something to life, that can put the money and time and energy into creating a professional football league. I mean, that's not done every other year, man. This is something that people are going to, ESPN and everybody, it's going to be covered like it's legitimate, Nick, until it's proven otherwise. It really will be getting a lot of hype as we go into it a couple years from now, 2020, whenever it's actually going to debut. It's going to be interesting. My only question before we wrap this part up, Nick, is we don't know where the teams are going to be yet. There's going to be, what, 10 teams, 12 teams, something like that. We don't know, but do you know which 3 teams you're going to root for yet? Because, I mean, I had this issue. So Nick is from New York, for those of you that don't know where that joke came from.
Right.
Nick is from New York. I mean, he lives in New York now, and he's from Detroit. So he's always kind of gone back and forth, whether it's basketball or football. He's got love for the Lions. He's got love for the Giants, I guess, maybe.
No, I don't have love for the Giants.
The Jets. The Jets?
I have rooted for the Jets.
Okay, so the Jets and then Detroit.
The Jets and the Mets. There's no other New York team that I would root for.
Okay, but what about – so, all right, so what are your teams in Detroit then? The Lions.
They would be the Lions, the Tigers, the Pistons, and the Red Wings.
Okay. So,
if you want to consider the Lions an actual
so no New York,
sport.
no New York. so
Some
no
people don't.
So no,
I don't know if they do. Actually.
No New York basketball team though.
No.
I mean, even though you were cheering it up in Madison Square Garden, buddy.
What? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. When I've somewhat Nets, I'll take that back. I've somewhat adopted the Brooklyn Nets because they moved over from Jersey. That was I lived in Brooklyn for a really long time, so
okay,
I enjoyed it.
All right, so you're still proving my point. And then on the day of the Super Bowl, or the day after the Super Bowl, he's sporting Philly shit. Now,
correct.
Now I'm going to go out on a limb because I just thought this through. I made a comment on your Facebook post, like seriously, I mean, yeah. But I think I didn't give it enough thought, Nick. Is this just the ball and chain? This is the ball and chain?
I mean, this is so surprising coming from a man such as yourself, or just coming from.
Oh no! What?
In general.
Sorry? What are you talking about? Which way are you going with this? Go.
Well, okay. This is very. I mean, I understand you're a Cowboys fan, so
yes.
I can understand that. Like that. Why would I be on the Eagles side just in general as a Cowboys fan? But it's like, I'm married to a Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay,
fan.
right.
I can write a book one day.
Right.
That says. It's titled "Really, Really Insane Things Men Will Do to Get Laid." Chapter 1: Wear an Eagles jersey.
Right.
Chapter 2:
Right.
Wear the Eagles jersey more than once.
Okay. Now.
Okay. I mean, now look.
Now, hey, wait. Hold on. Let me ask you a question. Let me go this route then. I can get it because maybe it's Philly and you have no real allegiance, to the NFC East and all of that stuff. Who are the rivalries for like the Jets or for the Mets? Like, would you wear your main team's rival? Would you wear that jersey?
I would never wear. Okay, who do I like in the NFL? I don't hate. I mean. I don't hate the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are a team that a lot of people don't like because it's the whole America's team thing.
Right.
Everybody agrees with that. But the Giants, very hateable team. I don't like the Giants, But they don't really. None of those teams really matter to me.
Right.
I wouldn't be caught dead in a Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Teams like
because of Detroit, right?
So the Vikings. I mean, they're a Detroit rival.
Yeah.
Of course, I wanted the Eagles to beat that team.
Right.
I hate the Minnesota Vikings, the Bears.
Right. Okay.
I can't stand those teams. So
all
those are the teams that I really hate.
Yeah.
And I've had, I have a lot of friends. Even if I met my wife at an Eagles bar, you've met my buddy, a couple of my buddies that are Eagles fans. I've supported the Eagles.
Yeah,
for a
sure.
long time through friends. I go to Philadelphia for holidays all the time. I go to Thanksgiving every year. So. The Philadelphia Eagles have been a rich part of my life for going on about 15 years now, and now they are a rich part.
I just feel like you need to, like when it comes to Detroit and New York, New Jersey, like at some point you kind of have to plant the flag, man. Like,
The flag is always planted in Detroit.
Okay, so if it's Detroit versus New York, you're picking Detroit.
Yeah, but the problem with planting a flag in Detroit is that it'll likely be burned down within 3 to 4 days, or stolen.
Or stolen. All right.
Look, man, and look,
covered in snow.
I don't want to digress too much in this conversation.
Right,
We're probably losing listeners hand over foot right now. But look. I mean, the Detroit Lions, they have the highest paid player in football playing for their team right now.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford.
Right.
Matt Stafford will never take a team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford is not an elite quarterback. He's not an A-plus player.
Sure.
And I understand that my issue is probably more with the NFL because the market says you have to pay him,
right?
Money
yeah.
If you want to keep him, he demands that much money. But it's just absurd that you're paying a guy this much money and you can't build an offensive line or a team around him because you can't pay anybody else other than this guy.
Right.
And unless you are Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, you're not going to single-handedly take a team to the Super Bowl. Those are the only 3 quarterbacks
you're right.
I can think of that will single-handedly take a team there. So, and it's lousy play with the Lions year in and year out. They beat themselves. There's a lot to hate about the Lions because they defeat themselves. And if you watch the Eagles this year, they were the personification of a team.
Yeah, they were.
That really played hard together. And deserved to win that Super Bowl through thick and thin.
Well, when Brady's putting up 500+ yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns, I mean, obviously you did something. Yeah, you did something right. But at least, hey, look, you always have Barry Sanders, buddy. One of my favorite running back of all time. Man, he's
always at Barry Sanders.
Look, we got other news, obviously, in wrestling as well. Apologize. I assume wrestling fans are NFL fans, though, and we were talking about the XFL. It's not a far stretch.
You've got that crossover. Maybe this rant we just had for the past 5 minutes will be a good indication as to the kind of crossover effect that this could have. You know what I mean?
That's
if
true.
You are an NFL fan, if you are, will WWE fans want to watch the XFL, or will they say, well, I don't, if you're a WWE fan and you don't like the NFL, will you watch the XFL?
Right.
Probably not.
That's true.
I would think not.
So WWE announced the end of single-branded pay-per-views, and they've also dropped 2 events. That was pretty big news that kind of came out of the press as well. And the 2 that they're dropping was what? Payback and Extreme Rules. No, Battleground is now. So Extreme Rules is being moved. It's being moved to where Battleground was, right, which is now on July 15th. So Extreme Rules was scheduled for September 16th. It's now being moved to July 15th, which is where Battleground, a Raw-only pay-per-view, was. It's now being removed. So Payback and Battleground are gone. I don't think anybody's going to miss them. It doesn't matter. But, Nick, before we really get into whether this is good, bad, or indifferent, what is the latest? Is there a reason for this change this time around?
I would have to imagine.
Poor sales?
My guess, really, honestly, is that WWE was really oversaturating the pay-per-views. They were giving fans these dual pay-per-views per month. The SmackDown pay-per-view, and then two weeks later, the Raw pay-per-view. And it wasn't doing anything for network numbers. It was, look, we've seen a lot of changes in WWE production over the past couple of years. They've eliminated pyro. They've scaled back on certain wrestler entrances. Tonight, for instance, they're doing dual tapings in Phoenix. They're taping Raw and SmackDown this week from the same arena in Phoenix. All of these things are cost-cutting measures. Well, if your network subscriber numbers are not going up with 2 pay-per-views in a month, why would you spend all the money to run a second pay-per-view in a month when imagine how much money they're saving now. By cutting this one extra pay-per-view, you're now running the 12 pay-per-views, Now, what I think is interesting, though, is that, and this has not been confirmed yet, but with the move, or I don't know, I don't think it has been confirmed. They haven't confirmed the change of time yet for each pay-per-view, right?
No, I don't think so.
Right, because I believe what is reportedly going to happen is now, you know how they do the big four pay-per-views are all 4 hours long.
Right.
And then they've got that 2-hour pre-show. So Royal Rumble was 6 hours. Started at 7 o'clock with a 2-hour pre-show beginning at 5 o'clock. What I believe is rumored to be happening now after WrestleMania is that all pay-per-view events will be 4 hours long with a 1-hour kickoff show. So there'll be 5 hours in total. And the reason for this is so that more talents can be featured on the shows. I mean, right off the bat, you got to think about it. If you're going to have dual branded pay-per-views, you're going to have 2 top title matches, maybe 2 tag team title matches, the 2 mid-card matches, 2 women's matches. That's 8 title matches right there.
Right.
You know, a cruiserweight title match, that's 9 matches right there. Now, if you want to feature any non-title matches on the card, now you're getting into 10, 11, 12 matches. So in order to feature you want to feature 12 matches, you may now have to expand to 4 hours so that you've got maybe, say, 9 matches or 10 matches on the main card. And then you use that 1-hour kickoff show to feature maybe 2 matches. So you can get a dozen matches on the card, and you can feature more of your talents. It will be interesting to see how that pans out. You know, do you think that's going to be overkill? Because that's been a big complaint about a lot of pay-per-views, the big 4 pay-per-views, is, you know, gee, the Royal Rumble was great this year, but man, that was, with the kickoff show, that was a 6-hour show. Do you think these shows are going to be criticized for being too long?
Well, of course. I mean, Raw's been criticized for being too long forever. I think that is without a question which, Nick, I mean, I don't know if there's really good analytics on this, though. I mean, how many people really, if it's just the 4-hour pay-per-view, maybe not. But for like the big 4, you know, WrestleMania these days is almost an all-day event. If you're just sitting around home, you got your buddies coming over, whatever, you're sitting around and you're going to watch the network a lot more because they've got a lot of live stuff leading up to it. So you're committing yourself to watching 6-7 hours of wrestling that day, and by the end of it, you're like, that was a mistake. But I think in this case, like, I'm not going out of my way to watch the pre-show that often, and WWE's going to need to do a good job of making it where, like, look, I want to watch the pre-show. I mean, you better put some really good stuff on the pre-show in order to do it, but to get people there, because someone like me, 4 hours is going to seem like an eternity, I'm sure, on some of these pay-per-views. But I do think that most people, look, if they get tired of it being too long, they'll just go to the 4 hours and they'll make do. I do think, but could it hurt Raw? Could it hurt SmackDown in the end? Yes, maybe. You know, I mean, if you're giving, you know, could you give up some hours during the week and pick and choose? All right, I'm going to start watching SmackDown a little less because pay-per-views are this long. Maybe, you know, I mean, I don't know if and again, I don't know if the analytics are there that suggest people, you know, what is the numbers? 40%, 50% watch the pre-show on top of the pay-per-views. I mean, I don't know those numbers, and until I did, it'd be hard to really know how many people are going to sit around watching 6 hours of wrestling, and I think that's absurd, but I do understand the point of it, you know, like, at this point, the pay-per-views are not necessarily, it's not really bringing them direct money. You know, when they did the brand split and they were still on pay-per-view, Nick, you know, look, yeah, let's say you're getting, just for easy math, 400,000, right? If you're getting 400,000 every month for a co-branded pay-per-view, and then you split that in half, and instead of getting 400, you're only getting 250 for SmackDown and Raw. Every month, that's still 500,000 versus 400,000. So yes, the numbers, you know, the numbers declined when it was on pay-per-view, but you were still making a lot more money off the buys because you had that extra 100,000 or whatever the numbers were. That was just easy math. Again, that's no longer the case anymore, Nick. You know, that doesn't help. Like the enormous expense that it takes to put on these pay-per-views, if you're not making it worth your while by having more pay-per-view buys, and the ticket sales and everything that goes into those one-off events. With the network now, that's no longer the case. Their only motive these days, Nick, is merch, is ticket sales. These like 3 motives essentially that I know of. Maybe I'm obviously TV deals, so that's not true either. So there's probably 4 to 5 major priorities. But one of those 5, at least, is the WWE Network subscribers. So you beef up your one pay-per-view a month. You focus on your TV into your pay-per-view. You go back a little bit more traditional. There's still more pay-per-views than 12 a year these days, but it's a different ball game anymore, man, with the network. So you just can't look at it anymore like you used to. Like used to when they made this change, I was kind of surprised.
Right.
Like I really was, because it's like, look, you're still probably making more money with the separate pay-per-views, because you got pay-per-view buys in there. With the network now, that's not the case anymore.
It's completely different.
So, now it's just like...
It's all about network subscribers.
Yes.
It's all about bringing in these new subscribers who are still just paying $9.99 a month. But you're no longer charging 60, whatever that price was, $60 a month for the pay-per-view, but you're still spending the same amount of money that it would have cost to produce $60.
Do they release numbers, Nick, every month like they used to? I mean, pay-per-view buys, you knew that it was going to be hold on, sorry, all right, we're back. Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. I don't know. If you saw the whole camera shake not too long ago, like I literally knocked the hell out of it with my knee, and all of a sudden that kind of happened, and there you go. I mean, that's the best I've got for you anyway. Nick, so we were talking about the pay-per-views, obviously whether or not it's going to end up being a big deal or not. I mean, it's just a different ball game. It's all about the subscribers, like we mentioned. I don't know if I don't know if they actually list anymore, Nick, whether or not, like, what the pay-per-view buys are. Not buys, but views at least. Do we really have any indication every month or whatever of what it is? Like, do you know what I mean?
No, we don't. We definitely, we know what are the most viewed shows on the network, and those are always
not specific, right,
but we don't know specific.
All right, so we don't know.
What we do know specifically is how many, if the subscriber count has actually increased. And by what margin has the subscriber count increased? So if you're not seeing significant increases in subscriber numbers,
right, you're just saving money. Then you're trying to save money. Then
you might as well save money.
Yeah.
Pulling in about the same amount, of subscribers.
So we'll follow that and see how it goes, and hopefully the quality of the products simply will get better. I mean, that's what the goal is for them, I'm sure, and that's, of course, what as wrestling fans we're going to be looking forward to. So before we get out of here, Nick, I mean, if there's anything else you want to talk about, I wanted to talk about this last week. Maybe you can give me an update. I read a report maybe a week ago. Dolph Ziggler signed a new contract, and I've been wanting to rant about Dolph Ziggler and the, since the last time we've been talking about him before the Royal Rumble. But what sucks about it is last week I had it all planned out. I was going to come on here and talk about it and rant about Dolph Ziggler and the woe is him story that he just does not get any just due, doesn't get any big pushes. He really should. And today's environment in the WWE is really the best time. It no longer matters really how big you are. It really doesn't matter whether you can talk on the mic like AJ Styles, Nakamura, it's Kevin Owens even in some ways. I mean, not the mic thing, but obviously the size or whatever, different looks, Samoa Joe. I mean, today's landscape is the absolute best for Dolph Ziggler to get over. It really is. Like, he could go out and tear the house down with AJ Styles. He could have torn the house down with the Daniel Bryans, with Nakamura, with all of these guys that everybody's looking up to and enjoying. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, all these same people. Yet, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. The report that I read is, he's signing a new deal. He had 2 feet out the door, apparently. He was on his way out during all of the stuff as far as the United States, dropping the United States title to the Royal Rumble, and, of course, not really doing much there. He was on his way out from what apparently this particular rumor kind of happened, this new story from somebody that apparently knows Dolph Ziggler, some wrestler or something put this out there. And then they met his price. And so he's willing to stick around, but not just stick around, Nick. Stick around and just simply accept his fate, which is, I'm going to gonna be able to focus on outside projects. You know, I can kind of just get used. I can put over whoever they want to put over. I'll be the good man, and I'll go out there, the good, you know, servant, so to speak, and just do my job. And he is perfectly fine with that. And so the rant that I really had, Nick, like, how can I be more mad than Dolph? You know what I mean? Like, I guess if he's not mad about it, I'm not mad, but obviously he wasn't happy. Like, he was on his way out, if this story is true. Now he's back because, yeah, they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. They're giving him permission to go work outside projects, which I'm sure he wants to do a little bit more of, Hollywood, different things. That's great and all, but what a wasted talent in my mind, Nick. Is there one example? Somebody please give me an example that not because of injury like an Edge or a Daniel Bryan, none of this. Someone who had as much talent as this guy had, and maybe I'm just on an island over here by myself as far as thinking that or believing he has as much talent as I feel he does. But is there anybody in your mind that comes to mind anyway, Nick, of someone that deserved it this much and got screwed over this much? Like, is there anybody that you can think of that has gotten a bigger shaft by the WWE, at least in recent memory or any memory, than Dolph Ziggler? Like, honestly.
I mean,
well, first, just so I know that, let me preface, just so I know whether or not you're going to even be coming from the same place that I am when you answer that question. Do you put Dolph on that level? Like, potentially on that level?
You mean on a top level?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, it was unfortunate when he won his first title, you know, and then God, it was so long ago now. I mean, was it a concussion? Something.
Yeah,
I
don't remember.
A concussion that sidelined him. And,
right.
You know, I mean, he deserves a world title run. There's no doubt about it. I think he's got all the tools. You know, he really is. You know, obviously people always compare him to an HBK. I think he has that. Definitely, I get those comparisons. You know,
is he a Hall of Fame guy? Since we've been talking about that today,
well,
with the career that he's got.
I think. See, here's the thing, though. But that's another thing. That's another thing that really, when you talk about criteria, to what extent does the creative team influence you being a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, well, of course.
Hulk Hogan is a Hall of Famer.
It has to, though. It has to.
Hulk Hogan is a Hall of Famer because he's the biggest star that wrestling has ever had.
Of course.
But that's because the WWE machine chose him to be that star. You know, that could have been Jake Roberts. It could have been Macho Man. It could have been anybody else. You know, maybe anybody else. I don't know. You know, maybe it only could have been Hulk Hogan. But if you look at on television, has Dolph Ziggler had a Hall of Fame career? No, he hasn't. But in reality, could he have? Absolutely. But the WWE machine never got behind him in that.
See, and I'm going to disagree a little bit there.
Allowed him.
Yeah, but I'm going to disagree.
To really be that top guy.
I'm going to disagree.
So what do you base it on?
Well, I mean, I think you've got to base it on their position on the roster. No, I mean, you've got a position on. Look, Nick, is TNA? Are they going? Not TNA. Look at the NFL. It's really like. I guess statistically you can look at their numbers and see what lineman is the most, you know, like, but they're not your stars. They're not the Tom Brady's. They're not first ballot people that everybody and their mother knows that guy's going into the Hall of Fame. You know, like, to me, you can't allow it makes a big difference. I mean, if the creative's not on your side at all, then you're not going to the Hall of Fame. You know, like Heath Slater is not going into the Hall of Fame the way that unless he does this for another 15 years, maybe I'd be surprised if he goes into the Hall of Fame. And that dude does whatever you ever ask him to do, and it's not his fault. So maybe I'm actually proving the point that he could go into the Hall of Fame, because I think my point really is you can't allow the writers to dictate whether or not you're good in your role. Like, Dolph goes out there in his role when he's getting opportunities. He takes advantage. He has been champions, obviously, but at the end of the day, he goes out there in that mid-card role and he lights it up. You know, he does every single week. So
in that role, he's dealt a horrible hand.
Sure.
How do you make it interesting? Well, you know, and Al Snow has that great expression. He said a wrestler's job is to take chicken shit and make chicken salad. You're handed a lot of terrible gimmicks. Look at guys like Damian Sandow, who have taken terrible gimmicks and made them into something people really like and something that's really great. Look at Rusev. Here's a guy that everybody thinks, should have been booked differently, instead of being that just big anti-American heel, who monster anti-American heel. He's actually a really naturally funny, charismatic guy. All right, well, he's taken this Rusev Day thing and he's made it great, Dolph Ziggler has this big anticipated, where are they going with this storyline after Clash of Champions return at number 30 and the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
And it's just back to garbage. Eliminated quickly.
Sure.
And then and then he's back. Now, I mean, obviously he's going to be entered into the match at Fastlane, but look, let's not kid ourselves here. He's not winning that match at Fastlane. And actually we reported earlier on during the week, over at ProWrestling.com that the main reason why WWE is running these big multi-man main events at Elimination Chamber on Sunday and at Fastlane is because they want to keep the audience, they want to keep the fans guessing as to what the WrestleMania main events will be. Because pretty much,
even though it's already
we all
written,
know what they're going to be.
Yeah, right.
It's going to be Styles and Nakamura, and we know it's going to be Lesnar versus Reigns.
But the more people, they think there's a chance that maybe they'll do something different.
Is always there. Okay, look. So Dolph Ziggler left at Clash of Champions, and he made the surprise return at the Rumble in number 30. And oh my God, now he's going to Fastlane. Maybe Dolph Ziggler could win at Fastlane.
Right.
That's what they're doing. They want you to have that notion of doubt there. Maybe that could happen, and we all know it's not going to happen. Well, God, Shinsuke Nakamura already declared he wants to face AJ Styles. You know what I mean? So, I think they want to kind of keep you guessing in some way. But again, at the end of the day, what's this going to mean? This is going to mean where does this leave Dolph Ziggler at WrestleMania? So yes, but you made a good point, and I have to agree with you. I think maybe it is about what you do with your role.
Sure.
And he has done a phenomenal job consistently with his role. And this is a guy that's got to show up to TV every week thinking, oh God,
who is it this week?
What mid-card nonsense am I going to get thrown into today?
Right.
Who's the guy I'm going to do the job to today?
Yep.
Now, what helps you get through those days is $1.5 million.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, I can't knock him for taking the money. And especially if he's going to get to continue being a WWE superstar on TV on a regular basis and then go do his other projects. I mean, it's smart on his end. I think it's a crying shame, though, that as we're discussing Hall of Fame potential in a guy like Jeff Jarrett, that Dolph Ziggler's still one of their best true, pure athletes and just natural talents on their card, and yet you just kind of look at how many times he's been passed over and never really given a good shot. And I mean, and you look at someone like The Miz, though, who maybe is equally as talented in some ways because he makes up for it on the mic and his gimmick, but like, he's not better than Dolph. I mean, he might not be worse. I mean, that they're really close, but yet you can't put Dolph even on the SmackDown side for a while, really build him up, use his absence when you have the opportunity to build him up. I mean, normally, any absence is going to make somebody stronger when they come back. They throw him into the Rumble number 30, and he's out like it's nothing, and he's back to just being old Dolph Ziggler that nobody cares about. I mean, it's fascinating to me how they find that logical. It really is. And as a huge Dolph Ziggler supporter, as everybody knows that I am, I mean, it really, really irks me. It's hard not to just get passionate about it. But then again, now that it's new report is, hey, he might be happy about it and he might be okay with it. And, it's hard for me to get too pissed anymore. But nevertheless, Nick, we're wrapping up. Obviously, Raw's coming on just 20 minutes or so. A little kind of same old right now. I mean, it's run of the mill Raw, and but as we look kind of towards things are starting to shape up. Obviously, the multi-men matches you just mentioned, whether you like them or hate them, I mean, they're really just kind of they're on idle almost, Nick. It feels like, to a degree, until WrestleMania. But what are you looking forward to going into tonight, Nick, as far as, are there any unanswered questions? Is there anything specific you're wanting to see progressed? Anything you want to see answered as we head into, obviously, these next couple of pay-per-views before WrestleMania, where it does seem semi-inevitable what the card is going to be for the most part, with the exception of things like, is it Braun Strowman? Is it The Rock going to be teaming up with maybe Ronda Rousey?
Right.
You know, is it Kurt Angle, now a new one, Kurt Angle versus Seth Rollins potentially, versus, you know, because obviously Seth doesn't have a huge place on the card yet, and you could tell just off this last Raw, Nick, that they wanted to really start saying, hey, Seth is still here. You know what I mean? Seth is still here, and he's still good. So, I mean, we've got a lot of unanswered questions, but most of it is pretty laid out. So what are you looking forward to kind of during these weeks as we're heading to the big stage here in April?
Well, you know, I want to see, I think the Ronda Rousey thing is such an interesting, is really going to affect how this card shakes out. You know, if they're able to land The Rock, now you have all these possibilities for guys like a Strowman or a Seth Rollins as to what they can do at WrestleMania. Finn Balor, where does he end up? Unfortunately, with the way WWE keeps booking Balor, I feel like he's just going to wind up in some six-man tag teaming up with the Balor Club. You know, you're going to have Balor Club versus, you know, maybe Sheamus, The Bar, and somebody else. I don't know, Elias or something like that. You know, which I wouldn't want to see, but I think if they don't get The Rock to partner with Rousey, now you're going to have to take somebody, and who do you take? Is it Kurt Angle? Is it Rousey and Angle? You know, so that you've got Angle, Triple H. You know, is it Seth Rollins? Is it Braun Strowman? You know, because now you're pulling one of the main, even though if it's not Angle, you're pulling a main roster guy out. So you literally got now the possibilities of your top guys, you know, hey, like you just said, hey, Seth Rollins, I'm still here. Well, maybe now he suddenly is thrust into this very high profile match alongside Ronda Rousey. You know, who's going to get that rub if The Rock isn't there? Because whoever gets that spot is going to be plastered all over ESPN.
Oh, yeah. That's huge, right?
For the next week.
Right.
But again, it's going to have that ripple effect then on the card.
Right.
So, you know, looking at specifically at tonight, I don't know how much, we're not going to get any answers tonight.
Sure.
You know, tonight is all about get eyes on Elimination Chamber. But I think Elimination Chamber is going to be very, very revealing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're going to use Raw tonight to do, is say, make sure you get your eyes on Elimination Chamber, because Ronda Rousey is going to be signing her contract. And we all know how contract signings go on WWE television. Right. You know, are we going to see an attack? Are we going to see Stephanie McMahon come out? Are we going to see
that one? That's going to happen.
Charlotte Flair come out and attack her, and now all of a sudden we know that direction. Yeah. You know, and now if they decide to go Ronda Rousey in a singles match, you know, I really honestly think right now the answer to the question of Ronda Rousey is really going to determine almost to a very large degree the rest of the WrestleMania. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with that on Sunday night paper.
To that point, I think as far as we're not going to get a lot tonight, I think Seth Rollins and Kurt Angle, if that's we're just now reading about that potential match at WrestleMania, I think you'll start seeing some signs of that pretty quickly. If they're going to put Kurt into a match, they may take him out of consideration for the Triple H, Steph versus Ronda and whoever match. I think it might end up you might start seeing some signs here relatively soon about Kurt Angle and Seth Rollins. I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing to follow if you start seeing them throw a few little teasers here and there, because that would pretty much wrap that one up, and you're going to get those two guys going at it, and that'll be an interesting one. I mean, if anybody can go in there and still give Kurt a good match, it'll be Seth Rollins. I think that'll be a fun one to watch. Before we go, Nick, I just got one other question for you because it's been on my mind. The presentation of Raw and SmackDown these days, you've noticed they've kind of gone back to, they're changing some stuff up, man, some packages, the logos. And there's only one thing that stands out. Like I remember, like the backstage stuff. Like they're doing a lot of backstage those promos.
Those cell phone looking things.
The cell phone looking things. But they're also kind of doing just the straight. You know, it's not always cell phones, but it's the guys in the back with the camera on it. Like I remember the Undertaker and Paul Bearer back there, and it's just before a big match or whatever that night. They're back there talking about it. And last week or the week before, whenever it was Roman Reigns back there. Like it started off the show almost. It was like Roman and whoever it was, The Miz, or I don't know.
Oh, you mean that thing they do where you don't hear what they're saying? Like there's music or something playing over it, but they're just communicating. They're talking to each other.
No. They're looking into the camera and cutting a promo.
Oh.
Just backstage.
Just backstage.
Yeah,
like,
just right at the camera. Right, they're just
the
talking directly at. Right, they're talking like tonight. The Miz thinks that he, got one over on me last week, but it's going to be this, like it's just a simple promo. And like that was they used to not do that. Your promos were in the ring, or it was like the reality stuff backstage. That's what it's always been. You still, or it's an interviewer, you know what I mean? An interviewer, one of the women backstage. Right. But it's very rare, the stuff right outside the back door of the they're kind of taking some old school philosophies and putting it in there. Huh?
Yeah, it is. It's an old school approach.
Right.
And now you're asking me, I'm an old school fan.
Yeah, sure.
I'm an old man. I think I like it because one of the criticisms that people always have of professional wrestling.
The only problem, Nick, though, is you can see him reading, dude. You can see him reading. Watch the shit.
Oh, you can see him reading.
You know what I mean? Like Bray Wyatt is reading his shit. Like, and it's obvious that it makes for a better promo. But man, if you're looking closely, every one of them back there are. I mean, they're not screwing up on their words, you know what I mean? But hell, that helps someone like Roman Reigns, than giving him a live mic.
Well, that's the thing. And this, see, I know there's going to be so many people that hate this because they're going to say, here's WWE furthering the notion and the concept of the scripted promo.
Yes, right.
Which is what everybody wants WWE to get away from.
Yeah.
And we've seen doesn't work as well as when you allow a talent to go out there and cut a promo, But again, there's talents out there that are better at it than others.
Yeah, exactly. You can pick and choose.
People always forget.
You can pick and choose who should do that, and you can pick and choose. Yeah. So I don't mind that.
If you get a Bray Wyatt or a Matt Hardy, you say, I mean, what am I going to write Matt Hardy stuff?
Yeah, right.
You say, Matt, go out there and do your thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bray Wyatt, I think, is great at that. A guy like a Dolph Ziggler, a Dean Ambrose. These are guys that can go out there. You give them bullet points. They cut the promo based on what they need to say. Whereas, yes, maybe a guy like, well, here's the thing. You get a guy like Roman Reigns. You don't have him cutting promos. You have Roman Reigns cutting out and just kicking the crap out of dudes. You have him kind of do the Braun Strowman thing. You don't have Braun Strowman. I don't think has been hurt yet because he hasn't gone out there and cut the 20-minute promo.
No. But I was gonna mention this before we went off the air, and the only thing I want to say about kind of the new stuff they're doing though is I hate it on SmackDown especially. I can't stand the cheesy overlays, like the overlay things they do. Like the Usos were in backstage and they were doing like they're in the ring and they do the jail cell overlay on top of their promo. They're doing, like they're quoting what they're saying in big bubble letters as they say it, just like key points of what they say, and they'll overlay the words onto the like get out of here with that shit. Like that's terrible shit. Like it is awful. Whoever came up with that idea should be fired. Like, and if that was Triple H's or BG, if that's BG James, I don't want you to be fired. Sorry. If that was, Vince McMahon's idea, like, all right, I get it. But look, if whoever came up with that idea, it's awful. But Nick, speaking though, just real quick, last thing, Braun Strowman hasn't been hurt yet, and I get you, and I know where you're going with it because, he's not going out there doing massive promos, but they are really teetering that line now of funny, cute Braun, and he's really actually pretty damn good at it, but save this in my mind, and again, some people may love what he did with the big-ass bass and Elias last week. I mean, look, he really did do decent with it, but God, I really, really hope they don't go too far with it. You know what I mean? Like, not yet.
They're doing it with the whole Alexa
Bliss on the tag match.
Real cutesy and
and he's actually pretty good at it, Nick, but God, be careful. Don't, you haven't even gotten the full true run out of his beastness yet. Like, let that ride a little longer. Maybe add some hints on some shows like the mixed tag match. 10%, 20% of your audience, 30% at the most, maybe watch that shit. Like, that's okay, Go ahead and put him out there and see how he does. But in the middle of primetime Monday Night Raw, God, that could have gone bad, man. Like, it could have gone bad. It didn't. I mean, it was safe, but it could have gone bad. Be careful, because the more people pop for that shit now, it's just, then before you know it, he's going to be freaking Rusev. And you may love Rusev Day, but Rusev is really, really on that, in that sticky spot of being taken serious anymore. Like, it really is the case. Like, it's really, really, it's tough to take Rusev serious because of all the bullshit they put him through as well. So just don't go too far.
You needed to do something different with Rusev. You didn't need to do anything different with Braun Strowman.
You didn't yet.
You know?
Yeah,
It's
no.
just another example of WWE pulling the trigger too soon on things like
yes,
that.
right.
You were building up a great, believable monster.
Shit.
You know, and you didn't really have to
He's
pull the
tearing
plug
up buildings every week. Yeah.
Ripping structures around. He's killing everybody.
He's talking about terrorizing a production truck and then deciding, nah, let's not do that. That's a real $20 million production truck.
I mean, you know, and now
you
didn't have to pull the trigger on that gimmick yet,
Yeah, no, yeah, be careful with it. Like, let him do some shit on the side and where people aren't watching, but don't not in prime time, not yet anyway. Anyway, we'll see.
Let me make one more last point.
Yeah,
just to kind of revert back to that whole the idea of the promos, the into the camera promo. There's a reason why I like that style. It may not be executed well, and there may be certain guys, you know, like you said, if they look like they're reading their promos, it may come off poorly. But it's one of those criticisms people have always had about wrestling, and the response is usually, well, it's pro wrestling, you have to suspend your disbelief. But it's like when, you know, two guys are in the back in the locker room, and they're talking strategy about their match. Why would they be talking strategy in front of a camera?
Right.
You know, they would never be doing that,
right.
You know?
Right.
Or
at least here they're acknowledging the camera. Yeah.
Right. Or when someone says something in a promo, and then later on in the show, another person doesn't know that happened earlier on in the show.
Right.
How do you not know that happened? It's on television.
It's on TV, yeah.
When they do like a whodunit angle, you know, who attacked so-and-so? Well, there was a cameraman right there filming the whole thing.
Showing who attacked them. Right.
Really, they would know. So what I like about the acknowledging the camera is we know we're on television.
Right.
And that's what I love about the old school interviews is that's what they were. They weren't called promos back then. They were called interviews.
Yep.
You know, I'm here. Okay, there's my camera. I'm being interviewed by someone. I'm telling the people that I know that are watching me in the crowd and on television this. And if there's something I don't want them to know, then I'm not going to say it right now. Yeah. So that, you know, because obviously everybody's watching. And so I like that approach a little bit better because it adds to the realism of what they're doing. But yeah, like you said, in some cases it's going to be poorly executed. And yes, I absolutely hate the new graphic overlays. I don't know whose decision that was.
Yeah, I don't either. I thought it was absolutely crazy, but the fact that they did it, I mean, they're doing it. Look, I don't mind them trying some things out. Just don't try that out. Like it was really, really bad. I'm gonna cue this up though because I'm really excited about it. And we obviously got the announcement earlier today, and so guys, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next Monday, but I'm going to cue this bad boy up, and we're going to get out of here the right way if I can figure it out. Dadgummit, where is it at? Why is it not coming through? Oh, man, it's not going to work. I don't know if it's going to work, Nick. I can't, like... I'm going to have to... How's it start off like that? All right. Either way, we're going to get out of here. And guys, I might just sing, like, I'm going to serenade you off as we get out of here. Enjoy Raw, everybody. For Nick Paglino, I'm, of course, Chris Cash. Next week, we'll be back 6:30 Eastern on voiceofwrestling.net. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram. And we don't have an Instagram, but go follow us there anyway. Facebook and all those good things. And, of course, we'll see you next week. Spend my days working on a go. Hand on the clock keeps spinning too slow. I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight.